Just got off work. Just got off stage. Back in the old office / dressing room. Yeah. Coming out of performance mode and into human being mode.
Does that generally take a little bit of time to transition back into the human being thing?
For me, it does. I think in the nature of this show is like so much like it requires you to always be on, and particularly in my job, I'm juggling a lot of sort of different roles at the same time, and so to kind of like lay those down and come down from that, the high energy, like keeping the audience involved and engaged, like in between things, and staying on, trying to keep up with Steven and script changes and things, and then just coming back into like my own pace takes me a little while afterwards.
Once the show actually gets like started, though, is there still a lot of changing up happening?
Yes. Particularly in my world, it is part of my job is like sort of managing the energy in the room from top to bottom of the taping, and there's a lot of times where interviews change course or take a different tone, for example, or like if the audience is just a little bit on the less energetic side, and we need to like sort of like ramp up a little bit and to get it to show level, then I need to make some audibles, and I'll change this. I'll modify the set list on the fly, and I have a talkback microphone. I'll talkback switch from my vocal mic that I use to communicate with the band, and everyone on in-ears, and that's kind of how we flow accordingly to manage what, and that part of the job is managing the energy of the show,
I always just assumed that there was just like straight communication happening with the bands, but I guess that's a pretty large amount of space to cover.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, really like, these kinds of things is more like I'm reading what's happening over there and like interpreting like if what we have on the set lists still works for what's happening over there. And if a lot of times it does, and that's great. And if it doesn't, then like I'm relaying to the band. I'm sort of making those judgment calls. Like, hey, we were going to end like an interview. I think this happened tonight. Actually, we were going to end with we were going to go out of an interview on a certain section of a song that was a little up, but the interview took a serious tone. So I made an audible call to say, hey, let's actually do this song that matches that energy a little bit more. So, because you don't want it to be so jarring. Like sometimes you want to like contrast and lighten it up, and sometimes like if you just got into a really serious topic with, Elizabeth Warren, then you want to embrace that. And so, rather balance. So stuff like
I feel like when you have politicians on, you definitely need like something in the bag.
Yeah. There's a little organic humanity balance out the big world issues that they get into.
Also, kind of slightly surprising in that I don't know a ton about that world, but I know there's a lot of there are conversations that happen ahead of time as far as like on Steven's end and your. As far as like what the beats are going to be and what they're going to talk about, but it sounds like they're even like within that there's still some wiggle room in terms of what they talk about and what kind of the vibe is.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the bottom line is always just like for me, like it's part of my job. One of the biggest parts of my job is to sort of man the sonic footprint, the sonic identity, rather, of our show. So whatever direction Stephen and the writers and the producers go in. Like what I bring is ideally is like the right instinct, combination of instinct and expertise to be able to encompass it and make it feel like one thing. You know what I mean?
When you took over the role, was there a balance that had to be struck as far as, obviously, like, this was an ongoing show and, it is Steven's show, as far as sort of like keeping that identity, but also putting your own footprint on things?
I mean, really, like, I say this all the time, but I really, I have the best boss in the world. I wouldn't want to do a job like this for anyone else. And I realize I'm biased when I say that, but, for the last 9 years, I've worked alongside this incredible human, and that feeling only gets deeper and stronger. You see more and more of a human in the way they operate in a professional setting and as a human being, and it's just, he is who he is, I really resonate with his commitment to excellence, and the professionalism with which he carries himself and the respect with which he treats everyone that he works with. So the context being important, just because when I'm to answer your question, when he asked me to do this full time, he invited me to be myself and do it the way that I would do it, and I found that to be really, first of all, great and fortunate. I was really humbled and grateful for it, but also very freeing to this point of like how to sort of step into this role and do it honestly, but also, like you said, acquiescing and playing like very, very much the job description is to be like a sort of solid under support to very, very defined number one. You know what I mean? But I feel like if I'm being like when I'm being the most honest to myself, I have most of my career I've been doing that in various settings with various other artists and musicians, so it I find that I enjoy supporting people who I believe in. As a producer, I enjoy identifying psychologically what makes this person special, and then offering my perspective to help make that shine. And in a lot of ways, this is very similar. When
you said doing it honestly, what does it mean to do what you do honestly?
I think it means to me, it means I think there's I think of like the late night TV variety comedy show as like kind of like one, it's kind of defined in and of itself, like because of the time frame, like things like subtleties don't necessarily translate. It's kind of like, I think of it as like there's a high threshold for like, energetically as to like what translates in this medium. And in my brain as it lives, that's not necessarily the most organic sort of place for a musician, such as, or my musical identity, which like, my last record is literally, it's like acoustic guitars and brushes. And,
you didn't have to answer to anybody on that record.
Yeah. It's very, doesn't necessarily work for TV. It's not ready for TV. You know what I mean? When I say honest to myself, it's sort of like me. I'm constantly asking the question of like where the middle ground is, where the intersection of that is, and it's a moving target. But I continue to find it. You know, this has been just like I started filling in March of 2022. And then took over in the summer. So we're coming up on almost 2 years of like kind of learning, and I'm still in the learning space. But ideally, that like when I really feel like it's because fully showtime at the Apollo, like all 10, like
James Brown.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's not necessarily like I that's not sustainably honest to me. I need some contrast, but in a way that still translates to our audience and the medium, you know, and gets the job done. So I'm finding ways and flows to achieve that. As we go on.
When you say you're still learning, I assume there's obviously a little bit of you kind of being humble there, but is it a case of as long as you're doing this, you're going to be learning, or do you feel like there's going to be a point when you're like, all right, I got this?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, if I'm guessing, I mean, where I'm speaking now, you know, I enjoy learning. And that's one of the things I love about this job is that I feel like there will always be something to be learned because every combination of moments that leads to every show is unique. That being said, I also feel like I'm starting to find more and more of a flow as to what the range looks like and feels like, and what works and what doesn't always work as consistently, and so I also think I think I'll continue to find a place where it's maybe not like fully I got it, but like I know what to do to get to where it needs to get.
I think that is I don't think that is a good quality in artists in general, but certainly musicians of. Once you get to the point where you feel like you know everything, then you get complacent and stuff gets boring.
Yeah. May we never get there.
One of the things I appreciate about Steven, I have been to concerts and I have seen him there. So he's obviously like a music lover, and he likes some of the same like weird shit that I do, which I definitely appreciate.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
In terms of like the bands that are coming through, do you end up learning directly through those musicians as well?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, not so much. You know, we actually don't have we don't have guest bands every night. I mean, some weeks we'll have more, and some weeks we'll have like one, you know, all week. But and then oftentimes because of our taping structure, I miss a lot of our the performances, and unless there's someone like I really want to see, you know, in which case I'll have to see it on the, you know, watch it on the TV in the dressing room or whatever. But yeah, not so much. I mean, in certain instances, for sure. If I like I said, if I have someone that I really want to see, or if I have some friends that are playing, I just we had Lucius on the show like a while back, and I just, you know, they're all longtime friends, and so we actually played with them for their performance on our show. But yeah, every now and then those moments happen, and it's really nice.
You mentioned as a producer this idea of, I think you said, identifying something psychologically with the artist that you're working with. And I'm really curious what you mean by that.
Oh, I think when we were talking about I was relating it to being in a support role, much like as a band leader of a late night talk show, like supporting the host. It feels like a similar muscle as supporting an artist. Psychological element being just connecting with a human being and their creative perspective and their creative identity, and being able to have a conversation, see eye to eye, find the thing or things, or the combination of things that is unique to them and is special, and encourage it, showcase it. Like with, I guess like an analogy would be like in the same way of like like a blues singer may have a tendency to fall off of notes in a certain way, and that is a very distinct thing that like doesn't work for other people being off pitch, but the way they do it works for them. Like I, as a producer, like I want that sauce, and that's like everything else. I want to arrange the music and the soundscape in a way that lets that shine as the special thing that is. By comparison, like a host like Steven is like one of his superpowers, as we all know, is like sort of his quick wit. His brain moves at lightning speed, and his recall is just insane, like I've never seen. So I want to stay out of the way of that. There's some things that I have a genuine reaction, like I might withhold my laughter because I know he's got something else coming that's on or off script. You know what I mean? But like I want that part of him to be able to shine, and again, that's another space that I'm still learning. But in those kind of ways, like I that's how I approach the job, and one of the things I enjoy most about it.
You were talking about blues scales in that instance, and obviously, like traditionally, there's kind of like a set. There's a traditional way that scales go, but using the word psychology is really interesting to me because it sounds like you're speaking of something really like human and deep and personal about that person that goes beyond just what the music they produce sounds like.
Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe that the reason they say the music never lies is because it's this mystical sort of expose, if you will. It's like putting mist on a leaf. It's not gonna. You're not. The music's not gonna like change the identity of what it's portraying. Like what I mean. It's so like. I really believe that the music never lies, and like if it's honest, then that will come through.
Is there a degree in a case like that when you're going to produce someone who you don't know personally, where you have to sort of sit down and get to know them as a person to really understand how they tick?
For sure, 100%. I mean, I'd say like most recently, as I haven't been doing a whole lot of producing for other folks in the last couple of years since just trying to focus on this job. But most recently, it's very similar to like when we do guest sit-ins, when we have people join the band, like when we had Joe Walsh come in for a week.
See, that is a personality right there.
Yeah, and it's like it's not a straight. It's not like a 9 to 5 office personality. He's quite the exquisite genius, that man. but to your question, there is like an initial period of like I need to have a conversation with this person and find out where the connect is. You know what I mean? Because like the Late Show Band, we're really like a band of artists who all believe in each other, and so like there's an identity collectively that I also have to stay true to. Or at least in my approach, I stay true to that to have the best outcome. I want to find the through line of what's honest to like our collective identity, what's honest to the identity of the artist, and within that, I'll when I show up as band leading or playing or singing, where I can give honestly and it be relevant as well.
One of, if not the core element to what you do specifically is trying to find the common thread between seemingly disparate types of music. You know, talking about Joe Walsh, he's a rock guy, obviously, maybe kind of a folk guy, worked with the Eagles. But then, you know, I'm looking at this list of collaborators that you have, and I'm seeing like Tribe on there, Talib Kweli. Yeah. I know you work with Snarky Puppy, who we had on the show a while ago.
Oh, nice.
And it strikes me that like such an essential part, if not the essential part to what you do, is finding this common thread between seemingly disparate kinds of music.
Yeah, I enjoy that. I think I spent a lot of time in my when I was 18 and I got to Berklee School of Music in Boston. It was a big it was a hugely important time for me. Felt like an awakening of sorts to all the genres that I didn't grow up with, and I found so much that resonates with me across like all the genres that I've heard thus far, and so I spent a lot of time like getting into like what makes this sort of like one feel like it does, like what makes this one like this same tempo with the same instrumentation feel like a country western record as opposed to like a funk record, you know, and there's a lot of nuance in there that really excites me, and I like both and all of them the same. But I think from that place, when your mind is like looking for connection and common threads in things that like really interest you, and these are things that really interest me. Like I mentioned, instrumentation, time feels, layering, voicings harmonically, like triads versus extensions, and you know, these are kinds of things that can make the same song live in a myriad of different worlds and styles, and I'm someone who's really I get into all that.
I've never been much of a cook myself, but I started doing it lately because I was just eating too much takeout. You know, I'm in Queens myself, so it's like really easy to just get Uber Eats every day. And it was one of those things where because I never really cooked, I never understood why people got so excited about it. And hearing you describe music, it strikes me that I think a big part of the reason why people get excited about cooking is because in a lot of cases you're taking the same exact ingredients and are somehow making entirely different things. And, you know, when you really break down, hip hop's a little bit different, but it's still based on the same instrumentation, like at its heart, right?
Yeah.
When you get into sampling.
Yeah.
We're using, you know, it's all at, you know, all this blues-based stuff. It's all guitar, drums, bass at its root, and it's wild the different combinations you can come up with.
Yeah. And it's wild, like the way how like if you like you're taking those three elements, even drums, guitar, bass, and like the way you play them and the roles that you play them can connect to so many different traditions. And also how one thing that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is how much mix plays into that. Like, I think some DJs are really plugged into it. Like what happens when you take like especially now with Serato and some of the AI where you can split up stems and take drums that were recorded like off in the corner of a room, like on a single microphone, and isolate them, to a certain degree and turn them up, and how drastically that changes the identity and the style and the feeling of the music.
On the record that you put out last year, I alluded to this a little bit before, but it sounds like you play like basically, if not every instrument on it.
Yeah.
Is this a world that you're really like starting to dig into as you're doing more of this recording on your own?
I've kind of always been in this world. My first record, I also played everything on. There is a world of my identity where, like, I kind of hear things specifically to their context. Like I'll play like the acoustic guitar parts in a certain way, not because they live that way on their own as well, but because of the way that the time feel will sit in with wherever I have.
You know how things are going to plug in before you sit down.
Yes, and that's very different. Yeah, exactly, 100%. Yes. And so, like, I realize, like, I essentially turn that part of my brain off when I'm coming in with other bands or producing records for other folks, because
you don't want to micromanage on somebody else's record.
You don't want to micromanage. You really don't. I really don't. I'm sure if you, Mike League and I have talked about this as well. Like, because you run the risk of killing the magic before it's born. And that's one of the real joys of getting to work with a band like this. There's at least a couple of moments every night where somebody surprises me and takes something in another direction that I never would have heard, never could have heard, because that's where they're coming from. And if your ears are open to it, you can enjoy it, So I really leave that more at the door, with the exception of I kind of believe in this philosophy as a band leader of like presenting, like, here's a direction, and I'll make demos with, like, here's the drum part I'm hearing, here's the percussion part I'm hearing, here's the bass part that I'm hearing, keys, like this kind of idea, and bring that to the band, but with full, like, this is just, like, if nothing else, if everyone's low energy today and, like, that's, like, no one has any ideas or inspiration, then this is my idea of something that will work and translate. And if anyone has anything to bring in it, it's always welcome. And those are always the moments where it takes off and becomes something bigger than all of us.
In the case of Michael and Snarky Puppy, is there a degree to which you're kind of playing outside of your comfort zone?
Well, I wouldn't say. I mean, for me, again, like there's like that. I feel like I've lived a couple of lifetimes in this short time I've been here already. But in that part of my life, like when I was touring with the Pups, that was a part of my identity that it didn't feel like outside of my identity. It felt like, I was pushed to operate in a high level of things, but like odd meters and odd time signatures and like irregular rhythmic cadences and atypical harmonic structures and these things, like that, my inner nerd is always kind of twirling in and out of. Anyways, it's a great question actually, because yeah, I mean, in bands like that, like it's really fun and fulfilling to like kind of nerd out, and it's really amazing that they have so purposely pushed the envelope in a way that where like they found the larger global audience for some of these quirks that aren't necessarily represented in top 40 mainstream music. But it doesn't feel outside of me. It feels like it's like it feels more like like when you get together with your buddies and talk about like the nerdy stuff that like that outside of that, like people don't really care about, but like we do, and it's a lot of the reason that like it's fun in that way.
You develop a special language.
Yeah, you really do, and it's particularly fun now. Kind of coming back to it, we did this Mirrors record a couple of years ago with there's a project called Mirrors. It was myself, Michael League, Gisela Joao, Justin Stanton, also Snarky, and Becca Stevens, and in that particular project, it was a really cool intersection of that sort of nerdism and where I've ended up kind of more present day in my artistry, which is like a little closer to my country Carolina roots, I think. A lot of blues, a lot of funk, a lot of pop, a lot of soulful singer-songwriter. And, it's... I just think it's cool. It's fun to to like when you find it's kind of like when you as you start to find your own voice, like, but you're still that person who geeks out on like these things, and being honest, coming back into that space means something different than it did 10, 15 years ago.
It's funny, we talked a little bit about the contrast between playing on national television and playing with Snarky Puppy, but I'm also curious about the contrast between Snarky Puppy or just playing with like a jazz band and doing this record or your last couple records when you were doing everything on your own. I mean, in a genre, like, especially, I know it's not a jazz record, but you do sort of play around in that so values collaboration and improvisation. This just seems like an entirely different process when it's just you and the only one that you get to play off is yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it is an entirely different process. But I've been doing it my whole life. I think like when I'm like when I was, I mean, from my earliest memories of having like a tape recorder, once I figured out how to turn it upside down and record over like the tape and stuff, it made sense to me, like the way that this kind of like zooming in and out you go of like, zooming in, like being present, like as the performer, but also then zooming out just as you go, like of like how you treated the arc, and like, all right, I went up kind of here, I went down here, and like, so I know like when I go to the next layer, I want to that was cool, and I want to like double that up, or I want to like give some contrast and balance it out, and like I'll go up here so that when I went to that down there, it'll feel out and give me the sense of balance that I'm ultimately looking for. And in those ways, I'd say that's sort of the parallel of like playing with other people, where it's like, yeah, you're literally playing with your other self, I guess, but the awareness that I keep of the layers that are happening as I go is not dissimilar to the awareness that I keep of my fellow bandmates when we're making music together in real time.
That process strikes me as a good one to be doing, like during the pandemic, obviously, when, you know, things were really bad and you couldn't be with other people. But
yeah. Lest we forget.
Why has that continued to be an important process for you?
Which part?
Just doing it kind of all on your own like that.
I think I just there's a. I mean, it really. I mean, this is part of the reason that I do like the weekly series on my Instagram, the Cato covers every Monday, is because it kind of like allows me a space to exercise those demons, if you will. That there is a part of my brain that's always thinking and hearing things in relative to like a bigger picture and soundscape.
Is it hard for you to listen to music ever for that reason?
No, it's actually, it makes it that much more interesting to me, because first of all, like if I'm hearing it, that means like someone has like committed to it, and that sparks my curiosity. What made you commit to this? You know what I mean?
It sounded so loaded when he said it like that.
Well, I mean,
of all the things to commit to, this is what you committed to.
Well, I mean, but that's just a starting point. Like whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like if someone sends me something to listen to, like on Spotify, I just before I hit play, that's like my mindset is that someone committed to this enough to mix it, master it, release it. So I'm coming in wanting to get inside of it and understand why. And sometimes it's like straight down the middle, and other times there's some really interesting choices that people make that really even further pique my curiosity. So yeah, I think because my brain and I'm sort of wired to listen to music in that way, it's not hard for me to listen at all. It actually is exciting and fun to listen to music, especially when people make like some more adventurous decisions.
Yeah, I'm always curious. I think about this a lot. In college, I had a roommate who was a film major, and you know, like it's that whole like first year film student thing where it just for the space of about 6 months to a year became impossible to watch movies with him.
Oh.
It's just that thing of it, like when somebody's studying something and it becomes impossible to watch a movie with them because
yeah,
everything.
Yeah,
and I'm always curious, like especially you having gone to Berkeley, which is one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Whether learning those kind of fundamentals, if that can have an impact on your enjoyment of just being music, just being a sort of a passive listener to music.
Yeah, I think for a while it had an impact on my ability to listen as a passive listener. Probably not unlike your college roommate. When I was really in it, and I was learning about all these differences and things, and people, you're 18, 19, and like, people have their different ideas of what's right and what's wrong, and what the groove is supposed to feel like, and like where the time is, and the metronome is king versus like, what I mean? Like when songs would speed up, that was an early pet peeve of mine. Just like, oh, it's wrong, you know what I mean? Like the song ended like 10 clicks faster than it started, and but I'd say, I don't know, over time as I got older, and got some distance from the classroom side of it, I don't know, I started to expand and find more of the pockets of beauty that are possible outside of our little tiny boxes of pitch and time and perfect pitch and perfect time. And it turns out I don't really, none of that stuff moves me. The things that move me are riddled with change and movement and things that mirror the human experience more than I was right or something was wrong, you know.
I would assume going into that you had some ambition to do something specific. What is it that made you leave?
My only ambition coming was to learn. I grew up in Albemarle, North Carolina, and it's a very small town full of beautiful people, but not full of professional musicians. I didn't have any idea of a profession that was possible outside of teaching, and I just knew when I found out about Berklee through my high school band director. That was the first that I found that I discovered. That was the first I discovered that it was possible to go to school for, you know, instruments like drums or bass or guitar even. But I still didn't know that it was a profession that people make a living doing this until I got to Boston. And I went to, like, you know, I got hired doing studio work, and got hired playing club gigs, and wedding gigs, and I was just like, what? I can make a living and support my young daughter just playing. That's great. My only objective was to learn, because I was completely self-taught on all of my instruments, and I felt, you know, by the time I was 17, 18, I don't know, I had a very distinct welling up feeling of having reached a ceiling, but wanting, like, knowing that there's another level, but having no idea or concept of what it is. So I really just wanted to learn. And so in leaving Berklee, my objective stayed the same. It was like, well, as long as I keep learning, then you know, that's where my heart is at right now. And fortunately, I can learn on the job while getting paid to do it. And, you know, my oldest daughter was born when I was 19, so that was a huge part of that decision as well. It's like, well, I can, as long as I can continue learning, and make money in the process, then this works, and we'll see where it goes.
I mean, yeah, that's obviously a really important element, and I didn't realize that you had her when you were so young. I can't fathom that. just you know, that huge of a thing of having, like, another person depending on you at that point. I mean, you know, 19 is when you're supposed to be in college, just, you know, messing around, right? I mean, that changes the math in such a just unconceivable way.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, to be fair, I didn't fully fathom it myself. I felt the gravitas, but, you know, I was 19, and I just knew, like, well, I gotta figure out bills, and fatherhood, and
I got to figure out every adult thing all at once, right now. Yeah. So I sort of hacked my way through it the best that I could, and I really lucked out. My daughter's mother birthed an incredible human being,
that has completely changed my life in ways that I could not have imagined, and learned so much about love and music through learn how she needs to be loved, and I fully wouldn't have it any other way.
The upshot of having it happen when you're 19 is that you have the energy to go out and bust your ass, like playing out there. That goes away when you get older, and two, like, are more willing to take the risk, because like there is no guarantee going into music that you're going to make a dime doing it, and if you had gotten like to the point in your life when you were more pragmatic, you might not have pursued it that fully.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, like some people ask these questions, like, how does it feel to be living the dream? And I always kind of chuckle, because within the question you assume that I had a dream. Which I did not.
Well, you wanted to play music professionally, and you achieved that pretty quickly. So in that sense, you've certainly
yeah. I guess that still happens later in my imagination, though. Like at 19, I was like, yeah, I want to be able to make a living, like pay bills and doing this.
You weren't like watching Letterman and Paul Schaefer and being like, I want to be that guy.
Absolutely not. Nowhere in my imagination was that. And I really wasn't on a path to do that. I mean, I came into this because of my dear brother Jon Batiste called me to produce on the theme song, because I was coming back and forth to New York working as a producer on a couple other projects, but we'd never worked together before. But I was sort of doing like the sideman / production thing, and through that experience, he asked me to join the band, and it required like a full tilt change of direction, like in what I was doing. I was at the time I was touring with Bobby McFerrin, Snarky Puppy, John Schofield, and Marcus Miller. And this was like, well, you'll be, in New York 42 weeks a year. So like, total change,
Ability that you definitely don't get on the road.
Yeah. I mean, not even like at this point, I was really lucky. Like I had worked my way to a place where a lot of those artists, like, they had relationships with each other as well as with me, and a lot of times they would book their calendars around, like the touring schedules around each other, and for days that I couldn't do, I had subs that were always, it worked with their schedule to be able to jump in where there was overlap. So I was really, the stability wasn't even a thing for me. I'm very grateful to be able to say, like, my calendar was stayed booked, I mean, being a multi-instrumentalist probably helps that too.
But there's also just a stability of like being in the same place, of like having a house that you can set up as
For sure. And that was a big reason that I ultimately decided to do it as well. Because I was making more money on the road, truth be told. But the being able to be in one place and work on one thing, and having that afford me to be able to begin writing and recording my own music, that was the real value point for me at that moment.
I'm always curious, like somebody who somebody who does what you do for a living, are there still surreal moments?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the difference is not that, to me at least, the difference is it's not that there are no more surreal moments, but it is because of the volume of those surreal moments, like that you don't have really like the time afterwards to process them, because like you're already, by the time you're on your way home, you're already having to plan for to facilitate the next surreal moments that are going to happen potentially the next day, and it's your job to like facilitate them and make sure that like everyone is equipped to be able to succeed in them and enjoy them. So still a lot of surreal moments. I couldn't be luckier in that way. The lesson becomes learning how to really process them afterwards on your way to prepare for the next day, because I'm gonna start right over again tomorrow.
I wasn't ready for reflections when she came in my world. I was too scared to face my own fears, and I could see them in her.